Oh, wow. What's wrong with this? The United States isn't building what?
The United States isn't building enough homes.
The amount of inventory that we've seen increase has taken the level of existing home inventory to 3.8 months. Normal is 6.
Builders completed over 1.5 million new housing units in the 12-month period that ended in July 2024. That still wasn't enough to end a housing shortage that's a decade in the making.
Not only were we underbuilding for a decade, but then you get to the pandemic and there's this massive rush on housing.
That's making home prices rise fast in many parts of the country.
So if you are waiting for that market to really dip, it's not going to happen. The reason for that is that we are so underbuilt.
Both 2024 presidential candidates have ideas to fix the housing market, but neither stance seems to prioritize a key underlying issue.
A lack of competition is also contributing to the low supply of housing.
Can politicians do anything about the housing shortage? And if so, why haven't they yet? For years, builders in the United States have made fewer homes than the U.S. needs. There are various estimates for the scale of the shortage,
which is estimated anywhere from 2 to 8 million. Some people put it at even 20 million housing units that we are short.
The shortfall in new construction sent home prices trending higher over the past decade. The typical newly built home in the United States cost about $417,000 in June 2024, a slight decline from 2022, when home prices averaged around $430,000. But the typical household only brought in around $75,000 a year in 2022, the most recent year with data available. Purchasing a home in many major U.S. cities would require over $130,000 in household income. Meanwhile, many people have 2024.
I don't like these two numbers being compared to each other. The median sales price for new houses sold in the United States. This is going to be your middle point for how much a house costs in the U.S. in June 2024.
A slight decline from 2022, when home prices averaged around $430,000. But the typical household only brought in around
real median income for U.S. households. How many of these include people that are already buying houses, or I'm sorry, already have a house? I feel like I feel like you could do a better cohort here. I don't think these two numbers are very good to compare. But I'm also curious, households, does this include people living in apartments? It must, right? Or is it literally just people that are buying or renting homes? Any housing unit. Okay. And then are households ever, do households include, if you live with roommates, are you all considered one household for income purposes? Like would they say this household makes $200,000 if you have 3 roommates and you all make $50K? Or is it only families and dependents and people like that? You talking about the RealPage stuff already? Nope. I don't even know what that is. They had an algorithm that is allegedly playing a massive role in driving up the rental market. Until I've seen something that's dramatically different than anything that's been presented before, anybody that tells you that the cost in rent or the cost in housing prices is being driven up by some insert whatever large corporation, they're almost always a propagandist. They almost always have no concept of anything relating to housing prices, and they're almost always fucking retarded. So, yeah.
$75,000 a year in 2022, the most recent year with data.
I try to refer to the RealPage stuff going on right now. I haven't looked into the RealPage. I don't know what's going on right now. I just know in general, all of these things are ending up they're never as big of an issue as people seem to think they are. Justice Department sues RealPage for algorithmic pricing scheme that harms millions of American renters. The Justice Department, together with the Attorneys General of North Carolina, California, Colorado, Connecticut, filed a civil antitrust lawsuit today against RealPage Inc. for its unlawful scheme to decrease competition among landlords and apartment pricing and to monopolize the market for commercial revenue management software that landlords use to price apartments. Okay, this sounds like a piece of software that a bunch of different property managers use, and it sounds like the software is rigging or is colluding essentially to increase prices in markets. That's what I'm guessing. RealPage's alleged conduct deprives renters of the benefits of competition on apartment leasing terms and harms millions of Americans. The lawsuit was filed today in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of North Carolina and alleges that RealPage violated Sections 1 and 2 of the Sherman Act. The complaint, do we need to read this? Should we read this? 115 pages. Holy shit. The software likely only has a very subtle impact on actual prices. No, anything more than a little bit would be obvious to spot. Maybe. My guess is the impact is probably not huge, but still very illegal and very bad, right? Are landlords not allowed to talk about their rents publicly without an algorithm? Well, my guess is this isn't having to do with talking about your rent. It's knowing what everyone else is charging for rent and then bumping your prices up a bit rather than being competitive, right? The RealPage website even advertises that they get 5% higher rental rates in the market. They boast about their price fixing. Just because you're saying you get higher rental rates doesn't mean you're price fixing. It could mean that you just have a way of finding better tenants or something or more quality. Like there are other things you can do. Hold on. Fucking USB. Why don't landlords use this to compete with each other? I'm gonna... Okay. Ready? We're about to incorporate a lot of econ here, okay? So, close your eyes, come with me, walk with me. In an ordinary market where you have a high elasticity within a certain subsection of goods, so that means that, let's say that we've got soda pop or soda or whatever you want to call it, and you can choose between Coke and Pepsi, all right? We would say that there's a high elasticity. I hate USB. Sorry. I don't know why this keeps coming in and out. I don't know why I keep doing this. This is triggering the fuck out of me. There's a substitution effect where if the price of one good increases too much, then the price of another good will be easily substituted. Hold on. Is there a power surge at the port? No, the USB standard, a lot of people aren't aware of this, but USB cables have like little tiny accelerometers in them, and what they do is they detect anywhere along the cord where there's ever any fucking movement, and if that happens, the entire thing just reconnects to the computer over and over and over again, just to fuck with you. Okay. Pepsi, Coke. Cost of Pepsi doubles. Sales of Coke is going to massively increase. Sales of Pepsi is going to massively decrease, right? So high elasticity between the two, high substitution effect. Okay, so ideally, assuming the market is functioning as necessary, these two people should be competing with one another, okay? High elasticity within this domain, okay, meaning Pepsi goes up in cost, people buy less because there's a substitution product, people buy more Coke, etc., right? So there's an incentive to compete because they both want to sell things, and if they raise their prices too high, somebody will consume the other thing, okay? Now, that's true within the particular domain of these goods. Now, if you back up and you look at the general domain of goods, or the general, I don't know what the terms are here, but like if you look at all sodas and all pops, okay, the elasticity for these is a bit lower, okay? Somebody's going to be more willing to say, I won't drink Pepsi, but I will drink Coke. They'll be more willing to say that than they'll say, I'm going to not drink any soda or any Pepsi or any pop or anything at all, right? So the demand overall for soda is higher than the demand for a particular type of soda, right? That being said, it's still probably relatively elastic, and that if the cost of all sodas increases, eventually people are going to choose otherwise, okay? So this is kind of your mechanism for how these markets kind of sort of hopefully work in a perfect capitalistic society, okay? Within the subset of sodas, if Coke and Pepsi have a certain cost, if one is like, I'm going to just double the cost of my soda because fuck yeah, I'm going to make so much money. If they double the cost of their soda, okay, well, we're not buying your soda anymore. We're just going to buy Pepsi. It's like, okay, well, fuck you. But if Coke and Pepsi get together and like, we should both double the cost of our soda, and they both double it, well, now people are like, well, I don't need to drink soda if it's that expensive. I'm just going to buy juice. Or I'm going to go buy something different. It's like, okay, well, fuck us, right? In housing markets, there is an okay substitution effect from one unit to another. Okay, you want to rent one apartment or buy one house, but it's too expensive. Oh, fuck it. If you're going to jack your price up too much, I'm going to go buy something comparable for cheaper. So you've got high incentive in housing markets in that sense to compete with one another because you theoretically you can substitute one unit for another. However, the overall market is highly inelastic, meaning you have to have somewhere to live. At the end of the day, you got to buy something. It's unlikely that you're going to say, well, fine, rent is too expensive, mortgages are too high, I'm just going to be homeless. Fuck that. So because of that interaction, well, now we're in a world where if two apartments look at each other and they're like, hey, we control 80% of the units in the city, we should bump our prices up, right? If Pepsi and Coke do that, people go, okay, well, I'm just not going to buy soda, I guess. Fuck you. I'm going to go buy Sunny Delight. But if people in a housing market do this, well, you still have to have somewhere to live. Well, now you're kind of fucked. So the ability for people to collude here when there's a relatively inelastic demand for this sector of products is why there might not necessarily be a desire to compete if you can collude. Okay, sorry. A long way of answering the earlier question of why wouldn't they be competitive here? Because you don't have to be, because the overall demand for this class of good is inelastic. So there's a lot more opportunity for collusion and to make more money here if you're willing to price fix or collude, as opposed to doing it around a class of goods or services that are relatively elastic. Okay. Okay. That being said, I don't know 100% what's alleged in this complaint. I haven't watched it here, so okay. Or have I read this thing? The thing you're reading says that RealPage was apparently using private info for this different type of problem. I don't know why that would change anything I just said. Whether you're using private data, public data, or whatever, private data might incorporate another level of illegality because the way that your price fixing is illegal, but it doesn't change anything fundamentally from what I just said. Just looking at a town in VT, the rental to vacation rental Airbnb ratio was like 1 to 100. I don't know what that means. There were, a lot of Airbnbs. Fuck Airbnb. Ugh. I'm so happy people are going back to hotels. I stopped using Airbnb like 3 years ago. Fuck that. We'd like to hear you chewing good. Let's see. Landlords regularly solicit and obtain non-public information about inquiries. They collect this information through a variety of means, including weekly phone calls, emails, and in-person visits. They share this information through Google Drive. Landlords not only knew of these so-called market surveys, but they expected their property managers to participate. For example, in January 2018, Landlord 2's Director of Revenue Management reached out to Landlord 1's Director of Revenue Management and asked about Landlord 1's use of auto-accept in YieldStar. In response, Landlord 1's Director provided Landlord 1's standard auto-accept settings, including daily and weekly limits, and for which days of the week auto-accept was used. The Landlord 1 Director, explaining why she provided this information, testified that the Landlord 2 Director was a colleague, even though Landlord 2 was a competitor to Landlord 1. In September 2020, Landlord 4's Director of Revenue Management reached out to Landlord 1's Director of its Internal Revenue Management team. Landlord 4 asked Landlord 1, a direct competitor, which increases on renewal pricing Landlord 1 had seen in August, and offered what it had seen. Ooh, this sounds mega not okay. Or my guess would be that's not okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, going back to watching this.
$1,000. But the typical household only brought in around $75,000 a year in 2022, the most recent year with data available. Purchasing a home in many major U.S. cities would require over $130,000 in household income. Meanwhile, many people have depleted their savings following the pandemic.
We're absolutely seeing a trend of consumers, home buyers, moving from California to the Southwest and Texas, moving from the Northeast to Florida and Georgia because of a lower cost of living, less state tax, better weather. About half of the new home sales in the country are in 10 cities. And that includes 4 cities in Texas. It's much faster to get zoning and entitlement improvement. And so as that happens, then you can move it through the cycle faster.
Decisions from the Federal Reserve can affect the real estate cycle too. About 18 million households were priced out of home ownership between early 2022 and October 2022 as mortgage rates rose, according to the National Association of Home Builders. That economic tightening is slowing down the development of new housing too.
In the housing sector, investment stalled in the second quarter after a strong rise in the first.
There were fewer residential building permits.
You know what? You're right. $950 fixes the entire U.S. housing market. Ready? You're welcome. Just know that in the next 4 years, okay, when 99% of Americans are living in single-family homes with white picket fences, all right, with their 2 dogs, their 1 son and 1 daughter up front, running out to the school bus to go to their perfectly funded public school, it was because it happened here today on stream, okay? It happened here today on stream. Thank you, Aegon.
Issued, and fewer housing projects started in 2024 than there were in 2023.
The expectation, of course, is that the Fed will lower their rates in September. And while mortgage rates don't exactly follow the Fed, they are influenced by what the Fed does. So a lot of summer potential buyers were waiting till fall to see if rates would come down even more.
Some big builders have offered deals on mortgage rates to help home buyers bridge the gap. For example, the home builder D.R. Horton offered some buyers in the Reno, Nevada area a temporary 1-year 3.5% interest rate in 2023 before it rises to market rates over time.
Most of the big builders have their own mortgage.
You just got to keep this in mind. I don't know if they'll talk about this. I don't know if anybody gives a fuck. Maybe who cares? But like, remember that as you're doing all of this, you've got mutual things that are fighting each other, right? You're worried because houses are unaffordable, so you're doing all of these gimmicks to offer more houses, right? We can lower APR. Like we can, reduce interest. We can find, special first-time home buyer credits. We can do all these other things. As you do that, though, and more people are able to enter the market, demand is going to increase and housing prices are going to go up. You're not magically creating more inventory. So any incentive that you give for people to be able to buy and afford homes is going to drive up the prices as well, which is going to push some people out of the market. You're fighting against an impossible problem if you're unwilling to change the supply.
Mortgage company. It's called a captive mortgage business. They can buy down the mortgage rate. That is an advantage big builders have that private, smaller builders do not have.
There were over 400,000 businesses building homes in the United States in 2023. The industry remains fragmented, but the biggest firms have advantages that are helping them increase their control of numerous local housing markets. Just 10 builders are behind more than half of the new homes in 49 of 50 metro regions in the United States.
We're seeing cities like Tampa.
The answer is to just increase supply, right? Do Dems not like to mess with supply side stuff? The problem is that there's enough here that everybody can be mad about something without really wanting to figure out the problem. The issue is that from everything that I'm aware of, it seems to be the case that the free market actually solves for housing construction really well. The only roadblock is just zoning for it. if you zone for it and make it buildable, builders will come and build. Seems to be pretty easy. Landlords will come and rent. Property managers will come. Buyers, families will come. It's pretty easy to deal with that. But the issue is that zoning for housing and what kind of housing you zone for, these are where all the holdups are, but nobody really wants to talk about that because everybody that's so ideologically driven to have an answer to this is like wants to push it in a different direction, right? Conservatives might want to talk about like, okay, fine, we need more houses, but the only houses they want to see are like single family homes with white picket fences. If you say, okay, cool, let's zone for more high rises, like conservatives like what, liberal utopian megalopolises? Fuck that. I'm not going to build another LA. It's like, okay, well, what do you want? Oh, you want more rows of single-family homes in fucking Montana? Congratulations. Nobody gives a fuck. Like, everybody's so ideologically possessed to move in a certain direction for this. It's very hard to make any progress on the issue, I think. And then, like, for Dems are like, oh, we need to build low-income housing. Why? No, you don't. Who the fuck cares what the income of the housing is? If you want, you can go build 50 million, $7,000 a month condos, and that would fix the housing problem. Like, you don't have to build low-income public housing. How stupid. People will pay for it. People will buy it. People will build it. It'll be there. It just needs to be zoned for it. It doesn't have to be low income. It could be medium or high, or it could be condos that are super expensive. Like, stuff will work. This is all good.
As an example, where today the top 10 builders have more than 80% market share, that just makes it very hard for any new builder to get a foothold.
If you look at relevant markets, well defined for housing, then you see that in many places, it took the two firms that were merging from having 30% each to having 70 or 80 or 90% of the housing market. What's really critical here is the definition of a housing market. No matter how many developers you have building in San Francisco, if you live in the suburbs of DC in Virginia, those developers in San Francisco do not constitute a competitive threat to your market.
How will people pay for it if it costs too much? The same way that hermit crabs move into bigger shells. If you make it available, rich people, like there's the consumption match between the buyer and the household right now is really bad too, right? In that there's probably wealthy people that would move into higher end units if they existed, but they're not even on the market, Yeah, shit would sort itself out. People will move. It's not like they're going to be unoccupied.
Just 100 home builders in the United States were behind about half of new single-family home sales in 2023, according to researchers at Johns Hopkins.
The top 10 builders combined had 10% market share. Today, only 3 decades later, the top 10 have 50% market share, and Horton, the biggest, has 15% market share. So the concentration has been accelerating. My team estimates that about 2/3.
Aren't you wrong? I thought studies have shown rich people buying homes and they stay empty as investment pieces, hence the reason for low-income housing. I've never seen that substantiated in a study ever in my life. The idea that you could buy property and just sit on it and you're making money on the appreciation of the asset without renting it, that seems impossible to me. If that was the case, the rental markets would be printing money hand over foot. It'd be like 100% profit margins if that was the case. I don't think that people just buy residential property and sit on it, except for maybe in ultra highly specialized circumstances. But as a general rule of thumb, no, I don't believe you can make money that way.
70% of the unit growth.
Hand over foot, hand over fist. I don't know. I don't even know what hand over fist means. This doesn't make any sense. Okay.
That the big builders are delivering is from acquisitions.
The two biggest home builders in the United States are D.R. Horton and Lennar. Both have outperformed the S&P 500 between August 2014 and August 2024.
Their business is really going gangbusters. And if you look at the stocks, they're way up because they were able to grab such market share. A lot of the small to mid-sized builders just simply couldn't make the math work. Their borrowing costs were so high that a lot of them either went out of business or agreed to be purchased by the larger builders.
At the end of its 2023 fiscal year, D.R. Horton closed about 83,000 homes at an average price of about $382,000. D.R. Horton did not respond to CNBC's request for a comment. Lennar ended its 2023 fiscal year with about 73,000 homes delivered at an average price of $446,000. Lennar didn't provide CNBC with a comment on this story in time for publication. Both have acquired competing firms in the years after the Great Recession. For example, Lennar's 2017 takeover of WCI Communities. Lennar paid $643 million for the company.
Bro, the house I grew up in is like $1.4 million now. I'll never be able to afford what my parents could. Why not? What, are you less educated than your parents? Did they fuck up? Or did you fuck up? Assuming you are working in similar jobs or working in a better job, you should be able to afford whatever your parents could. The idea that in the 40s and 50s and 60s, like every single family could easily afford like a family home with 2 or 3 bedrooms, and like this is just a myth. It's just not true. Homeownership rates have been about the same, I think, for the past from boomers to Gen X to millennials to Gen Z. The homeowner rates are about the same, I think. The last read something. What's the name of this website? I think it was the last report I read on this, but.
Company, approximately a 37% share.
Wrong, no shot. Yeah, I know. Housing is boring to argue about. All you guys have are your feelings. I don't know what to say to you. If you want to link me a study or some data, you can, but you won't because you're wrong. And you're just repeating what you heard on Reddit, but I don't know what you want me to say. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
fair price premium. The transaction combined two of the largest home builders in Florida.
This whole structural change in competition came from a very difficult situation that started in the Great Recession. If you have a great crisis, who are the players that can withstand the crisis?
I think by age, aren't Zoomers doing better? I feel like you pulled up a graph. Yeah, I think Zoomers are doing slightly better than millennials, but that's because my people entered the housing market like right after the big collapse in 2007. So shit was like wacky as fuck. So I think Zoomers are a little bit ahead of millennials, but it'll probably all average out. It'll probably all come to about, keep moving on track.
And actually survive are those that are bigger, that have more access to capital. But not only that, a lot of them were receiving a massive liquidity boost from stimulus packages in the early 2010s.
Do you think that inelasticity you talked about applies to the labor market? Do companies collude to keep labor costs down? I think that can happen. Yeah, this is probably why labor unions are probably important as a counterbalancing mechanism. It's not so much even that they have to collude, so much so that it's hard to travel for work, right? Like if you work a certain type of job and there's an employer near you that's 5 miles away, and then the next employer is like 20 miles away for the same type of work, you're kind of fucked. Like they don't have to compete as much with each other, so you're a little bit bonered there.
The 13 largest home builders received around $2.4 billion. They could use these resources in any way they wanted.
In the intervening years, D.R. Horton, PulteGroup, and other big builders struck mega deals too. Experts believe that the industry became less productive as its lead companies consolidated.
The average builder, when I started in the early 90s, would tell the consumer that they would deliver the house in 40 or 50 days. Over the course of my career in the last 30 years, that went from weeks to months. So it's incredibly unusual that you have an industry.
Homes here about 10 times more expensive than 30 years ago. Wages haven't risen like that. I think wages have I think they've about kept up. I'd have to go and check. I think the things that have outpaced wages the most, I think, were education and maybe healthcare. Housing might have a bit, but not as much as people say. I know the education is a big one, but even at that, actually, I'm not even sure for education because I don't know if that's just sticker price or if that's like the actual cost that people pay or the amount that people pay.
Industry where you have negative productivity, essentially, where it's getting longer versus shorter. To be honest, it's not like the house is super more efficient or more tech friendly than it would have been before.
They're also able to bring down their own costs because they've simplified the models of the home. There are far fewer actual floor plans and models that you can choose from.
There would be 10% more housing built if we had the levels of competition of 2006. Are they getting large?
Dog, the last time you worked a real job or had to really grapple with any of these issues, the world was a much different place. Correct. Back then, you couldn't see every single person bitching about every single possible problem they had in life at any single point in time on social media that was all making money amplifying these exact same complaints to you. That is correct. That's why as a 35-year-old person, I have to deal with you retarded fucking Gen Z dipshits talking about how back in my day, you could work a minimum wage job and easily afford an apartment or a house. That's not true. Minimum wage when I was a kid was $5.15 an hour. I had roommates my entire life. But you guys see like a thing online, and then you guys are all like, you're like college grads and shit. You guys are entering the job market making 50, 60, 70,000 a year, and you're like, oh my God, it's impossible to compete today because I've got $26,000 of student loan debt and I'm not going to be fucked for the rest of my life. I was like, what do you mean fucked? How are you fucked right now? It's like, well, I the apartment I've got is so small. Like, bro, you live in a major city. You have a job that's in your major. You're like on track to be making, more money than your parents did. You finish your degree. Like you have, like, you're doing fine. Everything is okay. You're doing okay. You're doing fine. If we're living in an economy right now where the majority of people getting Uber Eats and DoorDash are poor people and those businesses are like thriving, we're doing fine, okay? Something is not connecting here with the math. And I understand you consume social media and you think everything's horrible and your friends say it's horrible and all of you complain all the time and that's all you see all day and day in and day out, but none of the numbers back up any of the things you're saying ever. I just don't know. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Because they want to, maximize profits. Well, all firms want to maximize profits. It's something that we expect, and that's why we have antitrust regulation and regulators. And that is where maybe the regulators should have been a little bit more strict.
President Biden made competition a focal point during his time in office.
In Cali, there's a big problem within unions filing sham environmental litigation /CEQA claims against housing developments, which they were not hard to work on, stalling new housing starts. Maybe.
Lead regulators
I don't know how much
in
that
Khan
affects
at the
things,
Federal
but-
Trade Commission and Jonathan Cantor at the Department of Justice have taken a sharper stance on business mergers. Observers on Wall Street believe that a Harris administration could take a different approach to antitrust policy.
They feel confident at some level that she's going to maybe have a lighter touch on regulation.
The policies from the federal government especially that are aimed at increasing housing supply should also look at competition.
On the campaign trail, Vice President Kamala Harris has called for subsidies to help builders construct 3 million new homes. If approved, the tax credit would go to builders who sell starter homes to first-time homebuyers. Harris has also called for $25,000 in down payment assistance for some first-time homebuyers and rent caps on corporate landlords.
We will take on corporate landlords and cap unfair rent increases.
The Biden-Harris administration has also awarded transportation grants to communities that allow more dense housing construction. And they've asked Congress to provide a one-year $10,000 tax credit for homeowners who sell starter homes to other owner-occupants. That can increase the number of pre-existing homes on the market, but also risks increasing demand for housing.
Hey guys, I lucked out on streaming when I was working as a carpet cleaner, so now I'm a millionaire and don't have to worry about price increases. You're all fine. So I bought my first house with Rachel, my girlfriend, when I was 19 years old, working at a casino, and I ended up quitting college in order to afford that. That's great. I like that you're projecting your life circumstances onto me, but the reality is, if you can sit here and watch my stream for hours a day, you're probably way more privileged in life than I was when I was 19, and I was able to afford a house. It wasn't the best house. It was it was like 100 years old, all right, and it wasn't in the best part of the city, and it was in Omaha, Nebraska. I didn't get to move to Miami or New York or LA or any of that, but it is possible, right? The problem is that like you've been delivered the world to you on social media. Like everybody has gassed you up and made you think that if you graduated with a 4-year degree, you should be able to move to Los Angeles, or you should be able to move to Miami, or you should be able to move to downtown Austin or LA or San Francisco. You have to be able to do this now. And if you can't do it right now and have a really great job and be able to afford a car and be able to have the latest iPhone and be able to do everything else, that like life is unfair and fucked and terrible. Like you want every single thing in the world and you're like 21 years old. You're like, I can't believe this. I'm 21. I can't afford a house. I can barely afford the iPhone 14 I just bought. I can barely even take out, Uber Eats and DoorDash twice a week. Like life is so hard for me right now. Like back in my parents' day, like, bro, you're clueless. I'm sorry. You can complain all you want, but I mean, at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. I don't know what you want me to say.
Who sell starter homes to other owner-occupants. That can increase the number of pre-existing homes on the market, but also risks increasing demand for housing. The Republican Party wants to address housing affordability too. Its 2024 platform says the party will reduce mortgage rates by slashing inflation, open some federal land for home construction, and also provide tax incentives for first-time homebuyers. In his campaign, former President Trump has criticized both Biden and Harris for the inflation that occurred during their administration.
Republicans have a plan to bring down prices and bring them down very, very rapidly.
His Agenda 47 platform claims that a Democratic administration would abolish zoning for single-family homes, allowing the building of apartments in suburbs, and destroying property values in the process.
The alternative to all of this is, well, if you don't allow this to happen, the neighborhoods are going to change regardless. And the neighborhoods are going to be changing because now a developer comes and purchased an old single-family detached home, and they put in place a McMansion that really changes the character of the neighborhood as well.
No matter who controls the White House, the president will need to rely on the other wings of government to address the housing shortage.
There's no reason to think that housing supply is going to change that much. Ultimately, it's a function of the number of permits that are made available to the builders. The demand is going to keep increasing.
It's going to take time to really resolve that shortage that we have built up for decades. If the laws are complex and the land is not made available, they don't come out and build.
Wow. I'd do anything to get in a home. If can, ... like team with siblings, family, anyone can build together, have wings of house, build, ... I don't even know what that sentence meant. What do you think about housing prices rising much more than wages? I don't know what housing prices... housing prices alone wouldn't be the only thing you would take into account. There'd be other things you'd be looking at. Because you'd have to factor in housing prices and interest rates. Like those are important. You would have to factor in... I don't know if you'd have to go sector by sector. You might be able to do median versus median. The thing is at the end of the day, like you look at some numbers to try to figure out why something is fucked at the end, right? So for instance, if we were to see, wow, millennials or Gen Zs or Gen Xs can't afford houses, like what's going on? Then you try to like dig through the data to figure out what's going on. But the problem is when you look at the end products, well, it seems like people are on track to own about as many homes as the last generation. So there's not really a problem in the numbers there. The only problem is on social media. It's people complaining about things. But then when you dig through all the data, it's like, okay, I don't know what people are complaining about, other than they have this expectation that at 22 years old, you should be able to graduate and buy a house and have like a family of 4 and be totally fine on a single income, from a college grad. And like, you should be able to do that at 22 years old. Like that's what people, seem to think now. But it's never been like that ever in the history of the United States. You've just been brainwashed into thinking it is. So, I don't know what to say. But... Do cherries exist?
Nearest. Here's
2-year-old Vsauce video. Why? The greatest legal casino heist in history.
An oversaturated method of advantage play has graphs that look like
Canadian housing crisis incoming clip video. I can't speak to Canada's housing market. I don't know anything about Canada's housing market at all. They might have different problems related or different than the U.S. They might have different situations. I can't speak to Canada at all. Is this guy wrong?
As a result, pre-pandemic, the average mortgage payment was $1,100. It's now $2,300 because of an acceleration in interest rates and the fact that the average home has gone from $290,000 to $420,000. By the way, the most expensive homes in the world.
Median monthly mortgage payment. Where does he get these numbers from? I am so curious. I wonder if this is the median monthly mortgage payment for newly sold homes. Because I'm pretty sure under COVID, when the interest rates dropped, I'm pretty sure the more people than in the history of all of home ownership have had a lower interest rate, which should drop the prices on homes. I wonder if this number here, does anybody have a link to where this is coming from? This says,
based on 420. By the way, the fact that the average $100 in-house.
Let me see where I can find this.
Out of reach. Median home price has skyrocketed relative to median household income.
Wait, hold on. I love people in chat mad at skepticism. No, it's just this is the emotional vibe of millennials and Gen Zers. Vibes are also unfight againstable, but I like to be informed at least. Hold on.
Income. As a result, pre-pandemic, the average mortgage payment was $1,100. It's now $2,300 because of an acceleration in interest rates and the fact that the average home has gone from $290,000 to $420,000. By the way, the most expensive.
Like what he just said there doesn't make sense. He has to be talking about new homes being sold, because a rising interest rate wouldn't impact monthly mortgages. It doesn't make any sense for people that already own homes. Wait, what is this guy's background? Fuck, I wish I could find where he's getting those numbers. Wait, hold on. CNBC. One sec. Let's check. This is the income versus average home values. Does this have this doesn't have the one thing. It would, wouldn't it? Because that number would include new homes and refinancing. Yeah, but you're not selling the majority of homes on the market. Most people that are in homes have lived there for decades, right? The vast majority of homeowners. Interest rates increasing shouldn't have a dramatic impact on monthly mortgage rates. New people buying homes at high prices will have an impact for sure, but that much of an impact in that short of a time period, I doubt it. What would we be looking for?
It was $1,100.
But the price of homes are still appreciating. It doesn't matter. If the cost of your house goes up, your mortgage payment isn't increasing. Please look this up before you talk about it. The average person can't afford to change their current living situation. Bye. You're permabanned. If you link something, if you want to link something, that's fine. Please stop crying. Stop the retarded fucking QQing. Holy shit. Every single time we look this up on stream, all the QQing in chat ends up being incorrect. And then people just get mad and like, oh, it doesn't show up with the data, blah, 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 blah. Economist guy talks about this guy. I don't want to just listen to a guy refuting him, though. I just want to know where he gets these numbers from.
It's now
bottom left is where he gets the chart here. Is that where he gets this?
$2,300.
The median monthly mortgage?
Because in pre-pandemic, the average mortgage payment was $1,100.
He's doing Investopedia and analysis of Redfin data. Redfin monthly mortgage payment. It's giving me calculators. Didn't we have near interest zero rates in 2019 compared to 2024, and mortgage interest rates were hovering around 6-7%? Yeah, I'm so curious how this. I'm just so curious how this number is calculated. Just read this analysis. Yeah, well, I don't want to just like watch or read a debunking video. I'm just curious how they calculate this number. Leading indicator. Doesn't that include insurance and taxes? It shouldn't. No. Technically, your mortgage payment should just be it should just be your principal and interest. Although people might colloquially refer to it as your mortgage payment plus your escrow, because it's usually all in one payment, usually to the same person. But mortgage payments, when we talk about it here, should just be principal and interest. Look up ARM and jumbo. Adjustable rate mortgages, I think, significantly fell off in popularity after 2007. I don't think people do. Well, what percentage of U.S. homeowners have adjustable rate mortgages? %92 have fixed rates, 8% have adjustable rates. Yeah, okay. His source is his own analysis, but the source he gives for a slide is the link here. This is such a weird... average pre-tax income. The issue with comparing kids from generation to generation is that kids today are entering the workforce at a later date than older people would have been entering the workforce. I would imagine that the financial health of a person at age 22 if you go back 50 years, is going to be better than the average financial health of a person today at age 22, maybe even at age 25. But if you go to age 35 or 40 or 45 or 50, then the financial health of these people is going to be better because obviously you're delaying your entrance into the workforce and you're front-loading debt to increase your lifetime earning potential. Ugh. Okay, wait, who is this Scott? Who is this dude? All of these groups are at age 25. Yes, that's what I just said. That college cost 100% does not include aid. $20K for college ain't the average out-of-pocket cost. Oh, true. Annual cost of public college is a percentage of income. 43% of 56K. Yeah, that's true as well. So this is also going by sticker price of college, which okay. This is all within the same year, January to December. Oh, no, wait, I see. It's 4 different years. It seems weird to do median or average house prices as a metric since real estate is a very regional market. For example, I mean, you can kind of do median to median. The only issue I think is the only issue is that you might have people who are living in homes that don't have to work anymore and own their home, but now their median wages would be dragging everybody else's down, and then the appreciation of real estate is increasing like the median home price, but now you've got people that are whose houses have appreciated in value, who don't have to pay a mortgage and whose income is lower because they're retired. So yeah, these types of figures. This is why it's good to do like a sanity check, I think, at the end and look and see at the end, like, okay, well, our home sales per generation actually like super negatively impacted or not? And it seems like in general they're not. So something else is happening that's okay. I'm not gonna find this guy's charts anywhere.
To productivity, it'd be about $23 a share, but we've decided to purposely keep it low. Out of reach, median home price has skyrocketed relative to median household income. As a result, pre-pandemic, the average mortgage payment was $1,100. It's now $2,300 because of an acceleration in interest rates and the fact that the average home has gone from $290,000 to $420,000. By the way, the most expensive homes in the world, based on this metric, are number 3, Vancouver. Why? Because 60% of the cost of building a home goes to permits. Because guess what? The incumbents that own assets have weaponized government to make it very difficult for new entrants to ever get their own assets, thereby elevating their own net worth. This is the transfer I'm going to be speaking about. This has resulted in an enormous transfer of wealth, where people over the age of 70 used to control 19% of household income versus people under the age of 40 used to control 12. Their wealth has been cut in half. This isn't...
Wait, of wealth or of income? Wait, hold on.
Over the age of 70, this has resulted in an enormous transfer of wealth, where people over the age of 70 used to control 19% of household income versus people under the age of 40 used to control 12. Their wealth has been cut in half.
I don't even know what he's saying here. None of what he just said makes sense. First of all, it wouldn't be your wealth has been cut in half. It would be the share of wealth you have as a percentage might have been cut, but it could still theoretically be increasing. In fact, in this time frame, I'm guessing it probably is increasing, at least as an absolute value nominally, maybe not adjusted for inflation. Also, I don't understand, is he talking about income or is he talking about wealth here? Because these are two very, very different things.
Where people over the age of 70 used to control 19% of household income.
Share of household wealth by age. Does maybe wealth here means income? It's very confusing to use those two things interchangeably, but okay.
Versus people under the age of 40 used to control 12. Their wealth has been cut in half. This isn't by accident, it's purposeful. This is me at UCLA in 1987. I know your first thought is I haven't changed a bit. This is also Mia Silverio, who is the analyst who put together these slides. By the way, Mia is 26. I did the math. Just by virtue of her being in this audience, it brings the average age of the entire conference down 11 days. When I applied to UCLA, the admissions rate was 76%. Today it's 9%.
Wealth is what you have. Income is your hour wealth. I don't know what that means. It must mean wealth, right? Are there that many people above 70 working? No, probably not. Yeah, that's why it's just a weird. I wonder how many people like even were in this age demographic in 1989 versus 2023. I don't know if you could look up like data for that. Like, what did the population demographics look like in 89 versus 23? I have no idea. There's a number of reasons why I wouldn't compare these two things, though, or think you're getting any meaningful information out of them, but okay.
9%. I received a 2.23 GPA from UCLA. I learned nothing but how to make bongs out of household items in every line from Planet of the Apes. And the greatest public school in the world, Berkeley, decided to let me in with a 2.27 GPA. And that's what higher ed is about. Higher ed is about taking unremarkable kids and giving them a shot at being remarkable.
Oh, yeah, shit. Wait, has somebody already looked into this? Oh, shit, he has the graphs. There might be a valid point underlying those pie charts. Unfortunately, as is, they are terribly misleading. Yes, those in their 70s have a considerably bigger share of American wealth in 2023 than they did in 1989. This is partially because they put restrictions on housing, but there are other variables at play. Most importantly, there are a lot more Americans above 70 years old in 2023 than there were in 1989. Just take a look at the population pyramid. Okay, so this is what I would have been looking for. Nice. That's cool. So this is our 2023 versus our 1989. What is the absolute, or I'm sorry, not absolute, what are the percentage points of this population versus the baby boomers have aged? The proportion of Americans in their 80s has increased by 50%. Similarly, increases for Americans in their 70s and 90s. America is great over the last 40 years. It means Americans will result. He doesn't give the number. But I mean, we can add it up, I guess, if you want. Or actually, fuck it, we can just add it. On the male side, 3.6, 4.5, 5, 5.2. So 5.3% just on the male side in 2023. And then in 1989, it would be 2.3, 3.3, 3.5, 3.6. Okay, so almost doubled, or close to, like 70% increase. That's pretty significant. Okay.
And every year, it's gotten more expensive. Higher ed and homes, and the ability, not only is higher ed incredibly expensive, it's not accessible. Because me and my colleagues are drunk on luxury, incredibly expensive. It's not accessible. Because
like, why would we even use, like, ignoring all the problems that I'm sure he's just using the sticker price here instead of like financial aid adjusted, like average payments or whatever. Why would we use top schools, an average admission rate at top schools? Why? Why would we even use that? For college debt as a percentage of first year income and then house price to first year income, is he using top schools for this as well? I'm not even sure. This is such a weird.
Not only is higher ed incredibly expensive, it's not accessible. Because me and my colleagues are drunk on luxury, and I'll come back to that. We've embraced the ultimate strategy. Me and my colleagues in higher ed wake up every morning and ask ourselves the same question when we look in the mirror. How can I increase my compensation while reducing my accountability? And we have found the ultimate strategy. It's called an LVMH strategy, where we artificially constrain supply to create aspiration and scarcity such that we can raise tuition faster than inflation. And old people and wealthy people have done the same thing with housing. All of a sudden, once you own a home, you become very concerned with traffic, and you make sure that there's no new housing permits. And here is a memo to my colleagues in higher ed. We're public servants, not fucking Chanel bags. Harvard is the best example of this. They've increased their endowment in the last 40 years and have decided to expand their enrollment, their freshman class, by 4%. Any university.
Why are we? I don't trust. I'm sorry. This guy might be a cool dude, but just based on the 3 minutes of data presentation here, I don't trust a single thing this guy says. I think I would have to fact check everything. This seems like a highly ideologically driven presentation. Why are we analyzing Harvard for this graph?
40 years and have decided to expand their enrollment, their freshman class, by 4%. Any university that doesn't grow their freshman class faster than population, that has over $1 billion in endowment, should lose their tax-free status because they're no longer in higher education. They're a hedge fund offering classes. My first recommendation, Biden should take some of that $750 billion earmark to bail out the 1/3 of people that got to go to college on the backs of the 2/3 that didn't, and give $1 billion to our 500 greatest public institutions, size adjusted, in exchange for three things. One, they use technology and scale to reduce tuition by 2% a year, expand enrollments by 6% a year, and increase the number of vocational certifications and non-traditional four-year degrees by 20%. Where does that get us? In just 10 years, that doubles the freshman seats and cuts the cost in half. This isn't radical. This is called college in the 80s and 90s. Another transfer of wealth. Look at what's happened to wages. Oh, they've gone up, not as much as corporate profits. There's a healthy tension between capital and labor. For the last 40 years, capital has been kicking the shit out of labor. What do you think? Whoa, what about wages, right? They've gone.
Compensation of employees, an index of corporate profits after tax. I feel like it would be like even comparing like like earnings of like top 1% or something. I think would be. It's just such a. These are just weird numbers to compare. Like it's just weird numbers to compare. Like Amazon posted no corporate profits until how many years ago? So they wouldn't have contributed positively to this, but obviously Amazon was one of the most important growing companies in the world. It's just such a weird comparison. Why these two numbers?
40 years, capital has been kicking the shit out of labor. What do you think? Whoa, what about wages, right? They've gone up. Well, if you compare them to the S&P, they barely register. It's been an amazing time to own assets, but your attempt to get the certification or the income such that you can acquire assets, it's been
versus the S&P 500. I'm so sorry. I can't. This guy is a hack. I don't believe anything this guy says. The S&P 500 are like the 500 most valued in this index in the United States. Why would you chart that against percentage of median income? Like even on just what these two things are, ignoring the fact that we're looking at values of companies versus wages, which is already kind of a weird thing to compare. Why would you? We're good. I'm good on this. Okay. This is retarded. This guy does politics. Okay, I'm good. Apparently there's a bad econ post on this. Half of the S&P 500 are not even the same companies. Yeah, true. You're not even looking at the same companies over the whatever because things are swapping at the bottom. Yeah. My rant about Scott Galloway's TED Talk about how the U.S. is destroying young people's future. Disclaimer, I'd like to note that I do not consider myself an expert on many of the topics he talks about, or even economics in general, but a lot of what I'm saying is pretty easily verifiable and basic, and I'll try to be clear that I'm expressing my opinion and not fact when doing so. Given my lack of expertise, none of what I say should be considered as the final authority on these topics. It's a Reddit post, for fuck's sake. The thing is, too, is that the Scott Galloway guy, like, he's saying some things that I think are agreeable, but I'm sure you could find better ways to illustrate how, like, the points he's making. Like, I think capital has increased a lot in power. I think this is why unions are probably more important today than they even were in the past, because capital is incredibly powerful today. The amount of money that you can make deploying capital is bigger today than it was in the past and whatnot. So I think there's important things, but comparing the S&P 500 growth to the median wages of society, that's such an astronomically stupid like choice of comparison. The first slide with data makes a claim about how pre-tax income, adjusted for inflation, has decreased across generations, from grandparents to parents to kids, and that cost of public colleges and home prices have increased significantly across generations too. First of all, categorizing generations by whether they have children or grandchildren is kind of nuts. It's a very wide overlapping range of ages. If he has actually fixed age ranges for each generation that don't overlap, oh, that's true too. I didn't even think of that when we looked at that graph. But I'm assuming he's just like saying he's grouping it by generation, but he was just using grandparents, parents, and children. That's my guess. I would hope. It's a very wide overlapping range of ages. If he has actually fixed age ranges for each generation that don't overlap and just made these categorizations for the sake of understandability to a non-academic audience, I still think that's the wrong choice, but fine. However, his claim that real income has decreased across generations is weak at best. Here's a working paper from the Federal Reserve that was published in February of 2024, 58 pages. Fuck that. And from the figures that start at page 35, shows that by almost every categorization they could think of, Gen Z earns more at the same age than every previous generation before them. There's some conflict here with Raj Chetty's work, but I don't have the time or knowledge to reconcile the two perspectives. But at best, the pre-tax income numbers Gallup presents are questionable at best. This got crossed out. His source is his own analysis. So by his own analysis, the average cost of public college is $56,000 to $24,000. I'm going to use numbers from the U.S. News page. He links a Media Post, which isn't the best, which might not be the most reliable source in the world, but it's probably, there's way better numbers you can link for this. I don't think that whoever posted this critique, well, I mean, I guess at the top he said he wasn't like an economist, to be fair. I wonder what the top response was to this. You can look up places that do like college information gathering on like costs and shit. Is a school board one website I'm thinking of? And then I think the government tracks some of these figures. You don't have to rely on a U.S. News article for it. Fan of Galloway for his business and marketing knowledge. Well, not much substantive in here. Okay, well, don't care. Did you see the Iron Dome in action last night? I got some Iron Dome from your mom. List all the money sinks right now besides healthcare corpses. Money sinks for what? Look up Fred median. Look up Fred median real person income. Did you see the video Forethought linked? No, I like to ignore him just to trigger the fuck out of him. Employed full-time, median usual weekly real earnings, wage and salary workers, 16 years and over. This is in CPI adjusted dollars. I don't know what I'm. I don't know what you want me to do with this. I looked at it. Okay. What does CPI adjusted mean? It's there's a thing called the Consumer Price Index, right? And what they're doing is looking at how much of I think of stuff that you would put in that basket, the CPI basket or whatever. They're indexing how much that would cost versus the median weekly earnings, and then seeing how that's scaled into the future, basically, if that makes sense. The money sinks in terms of wealth disparity. I don't understand what I don't understand what you're asking me. Older people are always going to have more wealth than younger people for a few reasons. One is they've had more time to build wealth, especially in the form of like having a house or saving for a 401k. And the second is that their earnings are usually higher. And at least until they hit retirement, my guess is going to be that their costs and debt should generally be lower. You shouldn't have to be like buying new cars, investing in education, and you're already through like buying a home and all the front-loaded interest on the mortgage. That'd be my guess. But older people in general should always have more wealth, more accumulated money or assets than younger people. That's like to be expected. That should always be the case.